Alright guys, we've got an 09 Chevy Cobalt here. Customer complaint was kind of a shutter, maybe a transmission issue when accelerating. I had a check engine light come on at the same time, and I scanned it. It was a P0300, which means random misfire detected. But looking at our misfire counters, you can see cylinder number 3 counting up. You can feel it. You can see the history. Cylinder number 3 is, that's what's, it should be setting at P0300, but some of the other ones have, a couple misfires here and there. So let's do a cylinder drop test. Here's another sign. Pretty constant miss on number 3. Here's number 3 ignition coil. So it gets worse. So it is contributing somewhat. Let's try another one. It gets a lot worse. So it is a cylinder 3 misfire, but it's not a hard, complete lack of contribution. So at this point we might just do a quick relative compression test, see what it sounds like, and then pop out the ignition coil and just do a visual inspection. Alright, relative compression test just by ear. That doesn't sound very good. I'm going to have to get the scope out and throw an amp clamp on the battery cable and see for missing compression in that cylinder, and then verify it with the manual gauge. Alright, we've got the scope set up, 2 channels. Channel 1 will be our sync on the number 3 ignition coil control wire, and that's unplugged. Everything's unplugged here so the engine doesn't start. And then our amp clamp is on the main wire that goes to the starter. That's set on a 1 volt for 100 amps. So let's crank it over, 200 millisecond screen. Wide open throttle. Okay. Pause it. Zoom. So my amp clamp is upside down apparently. Can we move it up? Well, we can either redo it or deal with this. That's pretty nuts. So here the high peaks are good compression, and look at that, number 3. So here's one repetition here. There's number 3 control, then whatever the firing order is. There's 1, 2, 3 missing hump. Got a missing hump on number 3. That is not a good thing. Tune-up will not fix this. Let me flip the amp clamp over and redo this test again. Let's try again. Stop there, zoom it in. Wow, that's pretty nuts. Very low compression right there. save this waveform. So now I'm gonna pop out, at least 2 coils, look at the spark plugs, and do a manual compression check just to get a reading. But this is all we need to know, and then we can do a leak down test to see if it's leaking out the exhaust valve or the intake valve. But yikes. Alright, mechanical compression test. This is cylinder number 1. Zoom in on that. Alright. We got, wow, almost 210. That's great. We'll write that down in our notebook. And then let's go down the line and see how low cylinder number 3 is. Alright, here's number 2. $210 on the money, right there. So that matches so far. Now, who wants to guess how low number 3 is?
It's gonna be about 80.
80? Okay. What about you, Darian?
75.
75? Well, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna look over here, and we're gonna let's see if our relative compression test can actually give us a pretty accurate number before we measure it. So let's compare a good one, like that one, and look at the value here. So cursor number 1 is 1.88. Cursor number 2 we're going to put on the bad cylinder, suspected bad, 1.59. So if we get the ratio there, we know that 1.88 corresponds to 210. And cylinder number 3 is 1.59. Who's got a calculator? So according to our calculation here, we should be getting about 160 to 170 psi on the gauge, which doesn't sound bad, but the other ones are, if 210 is normal, then that would be a low compression event. So we'll have to look up the specification online, but let's do the test before the suspense gets the best of us here. Recording. So number 3, 120 psi, which is actually less than our calculated estimate here. So it's a little more than half of the other cylinders, but let's still do number 4 for reference, and then we'll do a leak down test in number 3 and see where that compression is going. All right, here's number 4. Off the charts. I cranked it a little long, but I think we're still right where the other ones are, about 210. I'm going to hair over. Alright, time for a leak down test, and then we'll do more research on if this is a common issue or not, but we definitely have a compression issue on number 3. Alright. Now we have to do a leak down check, and quickest way to do that is, well, we need to get the number 3 cylinder up on the compression stroke. So I got the plastic cover off here. We can turn the engine over by hand, and we can do 2 methods here. Stick a screwdriver in here and wait until it comes to the top, and that could be the exhaust stroke or the compression stroke. Or a better way is just hook up our compression gauge here without the Schrader, and then when we're coming up on the compression stroke, we'll see our pressure start to rise, and then we'll use the screwdriver to make sure we're at the very top of the stroke. See if we can find our TDC. See, we're getting negative pressure. So that was the top of the compression stroke. Alright, see, we're going up a little bit. Right there. Now I'm going to stick a screwdriver in there, wait until it reaches the top. See the screwdriver sticking up there? See the piston's pushing it up? Right there, that's TDC. Now we want to rest our wrench against something solid so the engine doesn't spin over when we put compressed air in there. And for that we can use a breaker bar. So I'll show you the setup once I get everything hooked up. Alright, I have the breaker bar blocked against the axle there, so the engine's not going to turn. And here we just have shop air going to a regulator and the same hose from our compression gauge going into number 3. So let's dial it up and see if we can hear the leak. Cue the compressor. Like James Danner says. I'm going to wait for that to stop running and then we'll listen. Alright, so we got air at 20 psi going to cylinder number 3. And what I'm hearing with my stethoscope is it's migrating to cylinder number 1 here. I don't know if you can hear that. So that must mean it's either coming through the exhaust manifold or through the intake manifold. In the intake manifold I can't hear anything. In the exhaust pipe I can hear a little bit. I think what we need to do is put the spark plugs back in and then see exactly where it's going, exhaust pipe or intake manifold. Alright, I got the other 3 spark plugs back in so the air cannot leak back out of the other cylinders through the manifold. Again, we don't hear anything on the intake. But on the exhaust, check this out. Put my hand over it. Woo! That's where it's building up. Leaking exhaust valve or valves on number 3 cylinder. That's it. 100%. So at this point, I'm going to look online, see if it's a common issue, if it has burned valves or leaking valves or something, but that's the diagnosis. Tune-up's not going to help here. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something new.